KKHT wants you to meet three of the classiest guys in real estate.
I am Chris Kelso, the maestro of mortgage.
I am Rob Cook, the godfather of real estate.
And I'm Joe Orsack, the king of credit swing. And together, we're
the Real Estate Rat Pack.
Much like us, real estate right now is smoking hot. So whether it's buying, selling, or owning, you need to check out the Real Estate Rat Pack.
They're here to take your calls and answer your questions live. Call now, 1-800-808-5548. And now, the Real Estate Rat Pack.
Good morning. You know,
Rob cringes every time. He knows it's coming.
He knows it's coming, and he sits there and he's.
I don't even know where that began.
And you know what? And let me tell you, it's not going anywhere in 2014.
Soon, no.
It's staying right here. You know, we definitely want to wish a happy New Year to all of our listeners out there.
Yes.
I think 2014 is going to prove to be an outstanding year.
I think it's going to be a fantastic year. It's going to be a great year. You know, 2013 was a really strong year also. So we really can't complain about that. But 2014, I think, is going to be extraordinarily well.
It's already happening out there.
I have a shameless self-promotion.
Again.
Okay.
True enough. Hey, it's a big deal for us, and it's a New Year thing because at the end of 2013, that officially closed out the consumer voting, and for the fourth year running, we have been consumer voted #1 credit repair company in the glorious state of Texas, the greatest country in the world.
And tell them what the name of that company is that's #1.
Improve My Credit USA.
There's your shameless plug. Chris, you want to go ahead and do one?
Anybody go ahead.
No, but you know what? And I can vouch for them. Absolutely incredible company to work with. I refer a lot of clients over there. Let me tell you, they deserve all the accolades they get on that. So
I'm really proud of our team, and I get to be the ham and take all the credit, but they do all the work. So,
well, you know, Chris, I'm pretty excited about our show today. We've got some great guests, and our theme today is going to be "What You Don't Know Can Hurt You."
Can hurt you and will hurt you. Be careful.
It's a recurring theme because there's a lot of moving pieces in the real estate transaction. And first, I want to welcome Chaille Ralph, who was our 2014 Chair of the Board for the Houston Association of Realtors. Welcome.
Brand new shiny chair.
Welcome.
Yes. And I've known Chaille, we're just trying to figure out, probably 12 years, and you're in that volunteer leadership positions and stuff like that. You get really close to these people, and people become family.
And she still came on the show.
And she still came on the show. And
I think she felt obligated.
Came on board still.
She had never listened to it, so she didn't know what to expect. So
they're like, what? I have to go? Oh.
So what threat did you actually give, Rob?
Yeah. Anyway, Chaille is Senior Vice President for Heritage Texas Properties, and their main office is located right there off the West Loop. And so I'd love to get a little background information. You're chairman now, but you've got a long history of real estate experience. And not that you're old, but you started like you're like 12.
Yes.
It's not quite 12.
Help me here.
Put the shovel down, Rob. Step away from the hole.
So tell me, how'd you begin your career?
I actually started my career out in the commercial end of the business. Worked for a developer here in Houston, managing office buildings and marketing to potential tenants in the buildings.
And who was that developer?
The Russo companies.
I remember Joe Russo, absolutely. I remember that. So, and how'd you migrate over into the residential side?
Migrated over in the 80s. We purchased the rights to market and manage all of the Couch Mortgage portfolio with two partners I had, and then from that moved more into specifically to the residential end of the business.
Well, that must have been an interesting time because both those companies made the news quite often.
Absolutely.
And not necessarily the most positive light. So.
Well, but it was a good training ground. It was a wonderful opportunity for me, and we actually had about 3,000 homes that we marketed and managed throughout the Houston area during that time that we took over Couch Mortgage.
And when you look at that time also, you look at Houston today, where we're sitting at right over 5 million, and you're looking at that time, that's a huge portfolio for the amount of homes that we had back in the 80s.
Absolutely, and we had to inspect them once a month.
Oh, wow.
Well, that's pretty much true nowadays. These people that do REO business, or real estate owned, which is foreclosures, they have to do monthly inspections on these properties. There's a lot of accountability in those pieces. So.
We had to photograph them, too, as well, and there was no digital photography then.
That was fun.
So Eckerd Drugs, who is now out of business, probably loved you. Everyone took their photos to Eckerd's to get processed. I remember those days. I still have photos left from those days. I don't know what to do with them. Scan them and put them online somewhere. So you ended up doing that piece. And so how did you end up being Senior Vice President at Heritage?
Well, I actually moved into different levels with Heritage. When I left real estate for a couple of years to work for Dale Carnegie full-time, sold and taught training.
Very nice.
And when I got back into the business, I decided I wanted to to see a different side of it. And so I actually worked for Robin Mick, who was chairman of the board, the year I went back to work for her.
And she was House Hunters at that time.
She was House Hunters at that time, and then in 1999, House Hunters merged with Czar and Company and formed Heritage Texas Properties.
Outstanding. And so our theme this week is going to be what you don't know can hurt you. Now, I know, and because we've had conversation when we've had the issues between the two companies or co-op and things like that, there's a lot of stuff that can go awry out there. And so when you're talking with your consumers or you're talking with your agents, what are the kind of the things that you see are happening out there that may have been avoided if somebody had some time to ask some questions or kind of look at things that will happen, but they don't get handled properly?
Well, I honestly believe that communication is so critical in today's world. It really is important that you communicate back and forth with the information that you have. Too many times I think agents think something will go away if they don't talk about it.
It doesn't go away?
It does not go away.
Really? It's still there,
and that will hurt you.
Yes, exactly. And that's something I think is very good. One of the best qualities I have seen with agents that are extremely successful is the way they disseminate both positive and negative information. Because positive things are going to happen, but also you can have some challenges associated with a real estate transaction. And those challenges are actually a better indicator of how that agent is and how it's responded to during that process.
Well, and I think there's so many moving parts to a transaction that it's so important that you have that communication. I believe that your stronger agents really are people who don't think that isn't my job.
Right.
And they take on the whole process from beginning to end and even throughout the transaction past the closing. I mean, I think it's so important that they realize this could be a client for life and potential future business elsewhere.
And what are you seeing? What are you seeing as some of the challenges? Obviously we talk about what you don't know can hurt you. What are some of the challenges that you've seen and that you're seeing going into 2014 that individuals need to be looking out for if you're working with an agent or you're working to buy a home?
One of the things that I think we have seen so much more of in 2013 and we'll see more of in 2014 is the delayed closing. I think it's going to be a larger problem, and people need to be aware of what could potentially delay the closing and be prepared for it.
That is correct. And speaking of that, you have the new qualified mortgage, a topic that obviously we talk a lot about here, that's coming out on January the 10th. And so for a lot of people, it's about educating them on what those new changes are that, again, could lead to a delayed closing, in regards to ability to repay, the 3% rule, the debt-to-income ratio, a lot of changes, and it has nothing to do with the fact that they're not going to get into the home. But one of the things I do agree with, it's setting expectations properly and also knowing that sometimes dates, I was talking with an agent yesterday and saying, dates are not necessarily, they're not set in stone, they're targets.
Absolutely.
And so, you have to also have that flexibility and advise your client appropriately, if you ask me.
Well, and I think, too, when you get close, before you get too close to a date that's a target date as opposed to an actual date possibly, I think it's important to address that as early on as possible. So communication with the lender, communication with the title company, whoever you need to involve in the process to make sure that you are able to reach that target date, or you need to talk about moving it.
I would absolutely agree.
Here we are with 2.9 months supply of homes. So you've got an agent comes to you and says, I can't find any homes. I mean, what are they advising their clients to do when they're making offers and knowing that they're going to be in a multiple offer situation?
Well, actually, I think that's the number one reason it's so important that you have great relationships with other agents in the marketplace, because it's important that you're able to call them, talk to them about what they may have coming on in the future, as well as having that credibility when you are negotiating. If you're one of the agents negotiating with a listing agent, I think it's important that they know that you're real, that you're trustworthy, and you're there to get the job done.
And that's a point about what you don't know can hurt you. I think creating those friendships and creating those opportunities of communication with other agents, I've seen it be a night and day difference in a transaction.
And you just had it happen.
I just recently had it happen. That is correct. I just recently had it happen in one. And by luck, I happened to have financed the individual who was in charge of the REO. And when she found out who I was, it made the transaction go extremely smooth. Prior to that, though, it was not a smooth transaction.
They were trying to break it out before they realized you were involved.
It was trying to be busted out. So that's a perfect example of the way a relationship can truly make a transaction happen versus the alternative, which is the deal was not going to happen, the home was going to be listed back on the market, and the agents were not getting along.
Well, and I think it's important, too, that everybody realize that it's a team effort. Because
Yes.
many times you possibly have a lender saying, well, I don't have to talk to you. You're not my client. Or you have the other agent saying, I don't have to talk to you. I represent the seller. And I think it's important that everybody realize that it's going to take the team to get the job done.
And I like what you said right there, because you are right. You know, one of the things that has to happen is you have to deal with individuals that have a good team. And part of being a team is understanding that we're all buyer's agent, seller's agent, lender, client A, client B, are all in it together. There's a mutual interest to buy and sell a piece of property. And so communication between all parties is absolutely key, especially with changes coming down, to make it happen, because it can be extremely smooth, or it can, as you mentioned right there, have a lot of challenges along the way if that communication is not there.
Right, and I think the communication doesn't need to happen just when something's getting ready to maybe go wrong. It needs to happen consistently and throughout the transactions to keep everybody involved, keep everybody up to date about what the processes are and what's happening.
I would thoroughly agree right there, because too often that's what we see is that people only deliver the negative news. But let me tell you, it's a lot more fun if you deliver the positive news along the way. It makes any negative things that can happen a lot easier to overcome, actually.
Well, and I think, too, if there's no news, sometimes it's okay just to pick up the phone and say, I don't have any news right now, but I am on it.
That's a great.
And it's
I like that
because
point.
many times people think if there's no news, I mean, if you're not talking to them, you're not there.
Right.
So I think it's important that you stay there in the conversation, in the process.
And that's true. I would agree with you. I think what you talked about is absolutely perfect, is make sure that you're at least communicating. There's no news. Everything's status quo, whatever it might be. Inspections came back great. Lender is still working on the file. That communication, even if it's just to say hello. You know, one of the things that I practice all the time, even if I do not have any update, I will call a client and say, how you doing? You got anything planned for the weekend? That way they know I'm still interested. I'm still working on them. If I'm willing to talk to them, you know that I've still got them in I think, you know, in their mind. And that's the same thing, I think, if all of us do the same thing in the entire transaction, it makes it so much easier.
Well, and I think if you're not talking to them, somebody else may be talking
That's
to them. So if you're the lender and you're not talking to them, then another lender might be telling them that they would be talking to them.
Right.
If you're the agent and you're not talking to them, then somebody else said, well, if you were my client, this is what I would have done.
That is correct. That's a very good point, by the way. I think, you know, one of the things I always practice and preach the following, I tell everybody, is professionalism in our industry is extremely important. You know, HAR actually is the best organization in the country associated with an association for that. And because of that, I think because of all the training that you do and because of all the services that you provide, we really have a higher quality of agent, if you ask me, overall than some of the other areas that I've dealt with.
You know,
and I will say, you know, I congratulate HAR for that.
You know, on that note, as the new chair, and I know you've been in the business for a while, as Rob has already indicated. I won't give you any hard time on that one, Rob. You see,
I'm old.
Seasoned.
I would never say that. You see the full gamut. And I know you would never disparage anybody by any means, but, you know, hey, we've got 20,000+ realtors running around out there. Not everybody's on the same caliber. From your expertise in that, and especially as the being involved with HAR, for the consumer, the listener, I'm picking a realtor. So often that's, you know, Aunt Sally that just got her license, or, you know, whoever. Give the listener some quick tips on how they can know they're working with a professional.
Aunt Sally, please don't call us.
Well, I think it's important that you develop a list of questions to ask your potential agent who's going to represent you, whether it's in a buy or a sell process. And I think it's important that you hold them to that level of expertise throughout the process.
HR has a pretty good review system, don't they?
They do. We actually have. We are the only association that has a rating system, and you know what? Consumers want to be able to rate their realtor, and they want to. Not only that, they want to see the ratings before they do business with them.
Well, and one of the things that HAR is putting into place for 2014 is a list that consumers can use to try to determine what information they do need in a transaction.
You know, time flies when you're having fun, and this segment is actually coming up. You know, you are not going anywhere. You're going to be back here in our very last segment, but for all those listening, it is time for us to take a break, so stay tuned, and we'll be right back.
Welcome back to the Real Estate Rat Pack Radio Show with Chris, Joe, and Rob. The crew is taking your calls, so dial in at 1-800-808-5548.
And welcome back to the Real Estate Rat Pack Show. You know, time flies when you're having fun. First segment in the books. We're going to bring Miss Ralph back here in the very last half, finish talking about some of the good subjects. But one of the things that we're doing right now is what you don't know can hurt you. The next biggest thing out there is pest control.
You know, we've been talking about having someone on pest control for a long time, and I kept saying, let's get Tony Thayer on. Let's get Tony Thayer. And we were just sitting here discussing it on the break. I said, I've known Tony for 20 years. He's done probably 90% of the inspections. Best bug guy in the business. And so, Tony Thayer with Amaret Pest Control, welcome.
If he has a Facebook package, I am buying it. I got some pests I want to get rid of.
Anyway, welcome to the show, Tony.
Well, thank you much. I've been in pest control business about 34 years.
Oh, wow.
We started Amaret about 24 years ago.
He's seasoned.
We have 17 employees, which a lot of people don't know about that. We are a very diverse company. We not only do regular pest control, which most pest control companies do. We do termite treatments. We also do a lot of rodent exclusions where a lot of people will call up. They've got rats or different insects or different animals that are
we
coming
have
into the
fondness
house.
of rats. You know, we are the rat pack. You know.
Yeah, we love those those animals right there.
Yeah. So anyway, so our theme today is what you don't know can hurt you, and I've learned I've known more about subterranean termites than I ever thought I needed to know, and I've learned it all from Tony. And so there's things out there that people aren't aware of, and what do you advise them? I mean, maybe you have some wood destroying insects or something like that. And, you know, it's not just subterraneans. There's bees, there's carpenter ants. I mean, so talk a little bit about some of the things that people aren't aware of.
Well, the most thing that we find the people do that they don't pay attention to is and this has to do with subterranean termites, and that is either whether it's eastern subterranean or Formosan, is that they build the soil up above the top of the slab. That's probably the most common situation where they will do that. And you can't see the tunnel coming up the side of the slab. So it's real important to have at least, for me, 2 to 4 inches. Everybody says 4 inches.
Yeah,
but
I think FHA was requiring 4 inches of slab reveal.
That is the
as a
number
standard.
one.
And this typically occurs because they have a landscaper comes in and every year dumps another load of mulch in the beds, in the flower beds and stuff like that.
Oh, they accuse us of paying the landscape companies for doing that.
Yeah.
You mean you don't? That's the rumor all around you.
Yeah, there's a pre-salted mulch, right? I always accuse Tony of having throw down termites and stuff, but that's how it occurs commonly. You don't notice it. Every year they say, well, "Look, we're going to get some new mulch brought in," and so evidently it ends up even covering up the weep holes.
That's correct.
And then you can't see if they're tunneling up or not.
But how would you prevent that? I mean, here's a good thing about what you don't know can hurt you. Obviously, one of the things people always want to maintain their yards nice, and so they want to bring in new mulch. How would you prevent anything, knowing that the mulch you're bringing in is, let's say, insect-free, for lack of a better word?
Well, generally the mulch does not have termites in it.
Okay.
It's just that subterranean termites, well, they live in the ground, and they can be as far away from their food source as a city block.
Good night.
They'll travel as much as that far looking for food or water. So when that soil or the mulch or whatever is up above the top of the slab, they travel through the top 6 inches of the ground and they bump into the concrete. Well, they can't go through the concrete, so they'll come up. With that soil being up to where the brick or the wood meets the slab, it's an easy access for them to come in and you don't know it. That's the number one reason people get termites or subterranean termites is soil or mulch.
Now, one of the things I've seen this year that's been larger than I've ever seen in any year I've been in a home has been the amount of ants that have been developing this year. Have you seen an increase in that this year?
Yes, a large increase in ants.
And what's that attributed to, I guess, right now? I mean, we're seeing, it seems like this year we have seen the amount of piles in my yard, for example, go from maybe on average of 2 or 3 to this year I probably had to kill 20 or 30. I mean, it was just an absolute infestation of ants this year.
Well, ants are basically antisocial from one colony to the other.
Okay. So
when you use amdro-orthene, which is very good, and you go out and you kill this mound off, that mound off, and another one, Well, you think, okay, well, we really didn't kill them off. They just moved over. Not really true. Ants are antisocial. If you want to see a good fight, you take one mound, stir it up, take a shovel full of the other mound, and put it over on it, and you'll see that they don't like each other.
Really?
So when you kill
I've got
off,
a good thing I'm going to be playing with from now on.
Anthill 1,
My
meet
neighbors will be
Anthill
like,
2.
Chris, what are you doing? You got a shovel out here and you're taking ant piles? I mean, I'll be doing that all day long.
I would like to introduce you to your neighbors.
so
I hate ants.
ideally, to get rid of the ants in the yard is really do the whole yard, front to back, side to side.
Okay.
And therefore, you pretty much you may not kill them, but you'll kind of keep them and run them to the neighbor's house.
Yeah, you just introduce them to your neighbors.
Hey,
That's
don't
really
play
what
in
you
my
do.
yard. Go play in theirs.
Now, my memory serves me correctly, and often it does not, but they live in colonies of millions,
Yes.
and they're there all the time. And what you want to make sure is they don't come to your home, but they're out there in big colonies and stuff like that. What kind of preventative things can you do so they don't have to be calling you
Well,
after the fact?
The biggest thing, they do have granular baits. They have different types of situations that you can put on the soil. But just remember, the strongest colony is on top of the ground. They keep everybody else below the surface. And that's why when you kill off that one colony that you see, of course, we only see what's on top of the ground, it gives the next strongest colony a chance to come up. So you keep going from colony to colony. But the biggest thing is mow the grass, keep it real low, and then put out something that they will carry back to the colony and kill it off. Because that colony, as you said, can be quite large.
In your opinion, do you think most yards have, colonies living in it right now, or is it?
Yeah, most especially because of here. If you're up north where most everything is like a 9-month cycle, here in Houston, it's a 12-month cycle, whether it be termites or ants, whatever.
Yeah, I always tell people it's not if you have termites, it's when you're going to have termites, because they're out there.
I've had to deal with them.
And one other thing out there, speaking, because this is very interesting, speaking of termites, because there are things that you can do, even if you don't have termites today, to prevent or do some preventive maintenance so that if they do start coming around, it's not as big of a challenge as versus them already being there, getting into the weep holes, getting into your home, and then having to go and fight them afterwards.
Sure.
And so talk a little bit about what you would do, what you would suggest somebody if they didn't have termites and they just wanted to do something to prevent them, let's say, or sustain them from ever getting there, versus what you would recommend to somebody who already has them.
Well, if you're speaking of preventing them from coming in, the main thing is keeping the soil lowered. Moisture penetration or rotted wood. A lot of people think subterranean termites only come from the ground up. They do not. They swarm early spring usually, sometimes early fall. They will land in a window ledge. When we do termite inspections for home buyers, that's one of the things, and the next segment is going to be a home inspector, and he's going to tell you that moisture penetration rotted wood is extremely important on a house.
One of the things
Wow.
that I had to deal with, and I don't know, maybe our next guest Ashley will touch on this, but I had to deal with termites, and they had come back a couple times in the same area of the house, and we were treating it and stuff and this sort of thing, and we were fine for a good period of time, but I didn't find out till later on, by accident even, that we had a seal in an upstairs toilet that was leaking, and it was very, very minor. But it was that moisture from that toilet that went down into the walls and got that outside wall, the lumber, wet, and that's what kept attracting them back to it. Apparently, I guess. But we had the same toilet, the tank on it just decided it was no longer happy being a tank in life, and it decided to break and soak our whole upstairs ceiling. So it got replaced, and that's when we found out that the seal was bad.
Well, there
Great
are,
opportunity to buy a new home, by the way. When something
there's actually two different types of termiticides. One is a repellent, and one is a contact kill. Termidor, which is probably the most prominent, the best chemical on the market, is that it's a contact kill. Years ago, we used to have mainly repellent. So when you would treat the ground and you had that leak in the structure and there was termites already there, they would come down to the chemical, turn around and go back, because as long as they were able to get moisture above the treatment, they could survive in a situation like you just explained. Where the termiticide, Termidor, is a contact kill. They get into it, do not detect it, It may take as much as 2 weeks or maybe even 2 months to kill the colony off, but they contaminate themselves. They carry it through the tunnels, contaminate and kill off each other, and down in the ground and also up in the structure. So in a situation like that, by using the type of chemicals makes a big importance as to whether you can eliminate a situation.
Now, I don't know if Joe's situation like this, but I know a lot of people think they can go out and spot treat for subterraneans, and FHA doesn't accept that.
That's
My
right.
understanding, you were supposed to do the entire perimeter to do it correctly.
Well, yes, the label calls, and it's very specific on the label what you need to do, the drilling, the trenching, and the soil injection, that kind of stuff. But also, even though that's the law, the homeowner has the final say. If you're supposed to drill a patio and there's tile and the homeowner doesn't want it to be done, even though that's a area they can come in and sometimes generally do, is that the homeowner says, I don't want it drilled, so I don't want the signs. You don't have to do it, but it should be done. There are multiple.
I do have a question. I've got 2 small kids. They're getting old on me. I just had to rethink that 14-year-old. But anyway, they're still small.
They're always going to be small. They're always going to be your babies.
I'm small. My wife is even smaller, so they still are small despite getting old on me. Anyway, with kids out in the yard and that sort of thing, something that's always kind of been in my head. I really don't want to introduce chemicals into our environment as much as possible. Yet in Texas, you have ants and you've got everything else going on like crazy. Is there a balance where you can treat and not go heavy on the chemicals or?
Yes, there is. The main thing is really control of the situation. But there are a lot of organic, there's a lot of green products out there that you can use for people that do not want to use as much chemical.
Kind of give us an example of some of those.
Oh, soap.
Soap?
Plain
Really?
Oh, yes. We had a speaker, I believe it was Roger Gold from A&M, and we talked, and you talk about ants. He suggested that you could take, and I hate, there's a brand name, it's Ortho, makes a real good sprayer called Dial and Spray. And you can actually put that on the end of the garden hose, and you set the dial for whatever strength you want that soap to be, or whatever chemical you're spraying. Spray the whole yard with soap. And that's what he told us, is you could do that and control the ants. You won't kill them, but you'll run them to the neighbor's house.
What kind of soap are you talking about, like Joy?
Oh, yeah.
Really?
Yeah, liquid palm olive.
I'll be darned.
You heard
Yeah.
it here first on the
Wow.
Rat Pack
You're
Show.
gonna hear it first. Well, the other thing you're going to hear first.
And my hands are so soft.
Is that time flies again
yard
when
is
you're
looking
having
fresh.
fun. Tony, how can we reach you, by the way?
We have a phone number and a limited website. Phone number is 713-880-3479. And we're just planning and we're getting ready to open another office in Montgomery County. So we'll have that.
That is
Best bug guy
awesome.
in the business.
Best bug guy in the business. We're coming up against a break right now, but stay tuned and we'll be right back.
Ain't that a hole in the boat?
Welcome back to the Real Estate Rat Pack Radio Show with Chris, Joe, and Rob. The crew is taking your calls, so dial in at 1-800-808-5548.
And welcome back
We're
to the Real Estate
live.
Rat Pack Show. We are live. By the way, you can call in at 800-808-5548 and ask us a question and ask any one of our great guests. They're here. They're live. You
We
can
have
ask
some
a
great
question.
expertise in the house today.
That is correct. We really do. And the next one we've got, let me tell you, Ashley Bowles. He's one of our great sponsors and also one of the premier home inspectors out there. Ashley, how you doing, buddy?
Not bad. How you guys doing today?
Man, doing pretty good. You know what I could really use for the new year, though? It'd be some of those lobsters again.
Yes.
I could use some of those myself.
Yeah, we got to call your parents back up, man.
That's right. It's the only time they're allowed to come to Texas.
Well, the one thing I can tell everybody is not only is the Rat Pack about informing everybody, but we also form very good, strong friendships. We're not only friends on the show, but we hang out a lot after the show. And let me tell you, Ashley is a great inspector out there. Ashley, one of the things we're talking about today is what you don't know can hurt you. Last time you were on the show, you gave us a lot of good information. Obviously, we've been speaking with Chaille about what's going on in the realtor community. We have been speaking with Tony about pest control, everything going on there. What are some of the new things going on, or what are some of the things you anticipate for 2014 from an inspection perspective?
Well, it's just going to be a boom market. I mean, I expect it. Well, everyone expected things to slow down over the holidays, and it just hasn't happened. It's just been still steady. I was getting calls on New Year's Day. People wanted to book and schedule inspections, and they want everything done, and they want it done quick.
Right. And the good thing is the business is out there, right? But quick and getting it done yesterday and trying to get you to get through something really fast isn't necessarily the best thing either. What you don't know can hurt you means is that you also need to be able to make sure that you take time and that a client gives you an opportunity to do an inspection the correct way.
Well, and that comes to scheduling. I mean, people really, if you're going to get an inspection done, you're going to have to call ahead of time. It's going to be hard for you to call up and say, hey, I need an inspection done tomorrow or today. It's going to take you a long time you're going to be calling a lot of people to get that scheduled. And then the thing, too, is you want to make sure that the inspector has time to actually go do a full inspection on the house.
Right.
Which is really important because, I've used other inspectors in the past, and, I think Ashley's there usually like 4 or 5 hours on a house. And when he writes a report, it's very detailed. And that's because he takes his time to do it. And in fact, you kind of limit yourself usually to one a day most of the time.
A lot of the time, depending on the age of the home as well, because an older home has there's going to be more issues, because of code changes and things that, a lot of people don't realize that they have to maintain their home. You don't just live in your house. You have to do maintenance on it to keep it where it's supposed to be.
Well, on the subject earlier that I was talking about, I didn't know, I was unaware of the leak that the toilet had. I don't know if there would be any way I could know that. It's outside of my expertise, let me put it that way. But are there things like that, where is there something that a homeowner, I didn't know, so it did hurt me, it did cost me. I had termites and had to deal with them a couple times. Is there anything like that from dealing with the pests that we can look for?
It depends on where the toilet is. You kind of stumped me for a minute. There's so many things going through my mind.
Right.
Well, if it's, if your toilet's leaking on the second floor, usually you'll start to see a stain, or you'll notice, usually, if you look up, you'll see a little brown spot on the ceiling. That's usually signs of moisture and water. If you have a drain that's leaking on the first floor, because a lot of times, like they were saying earlier, there's supposed to be an access hatch around your tub so you can look at the drain. So, and that's an access point as well for termites to come into your house, or insects, because it's not all concrete. So they come up underneath and around your tub, the drain, it is moist, and that's what they're looking for.
And that's a good point. One of the things, we talk about all the time is, some things you can see by the naked eye. And in Joe's case, he just wasn't paying attention, right? So we all know that. But in other cases,
threw him under the bus, didn't you?
Just messing with him. But in other cases, though, there's a lot of stuff that goes on in inspection that you can't see. And the reason why I'm bringing this up is I can't tell you still today how many people I'll ask them, I'll say, well, you're going through an option period, and let me know when you have a home inspection done. And they will tell me we're not planning on having one. And let us know, talk about those things that an inspector is going to find that people generally cannot see, because we have a lot of people sometimes will say, well, I went through the home myself, it looks absolutely fine. Just because it looks fine from a physical perspective doesn't mean that it works fine from an operational perspective.
Right. Well, there's a lot of things that people, they really don't know. They look at it looks pretty, but things that are standards, like for a second story of a house, in a bedroom, the window has to be 5.7 square feet, clear opening. And people put screws in there to keep the window shut, and they think they're trying to secure their house. But what they're doing is they're actually stopping the egress of the house. If the house ever caught fire and you're stuck upstairs, you need to be able to either get out the window, or someone should be able to get you out of the window. So you always have to make sure that the window it operates.
Yeah, and here's one thing I always talk about. I see some people. Often, I think in this market, a 10-day option period is fairly typical that you can get on a contract.
Correct.
And then some people will wait 4 or 5 days to get their inspection. And here's the problem: is that it's never going to be a love sonnet. Actually, this is stealing from Tony because he always has this little speech. It's not going to be a love sonnet. In fact, it's going to sound like the house is falling apart. You're probably going to have another series of negotiations based on what you find, and waiting too long will kind of take that freedom of having to negotiate away from you. So, I mean, what's your lead time typically?
Well, I always guarantee to have my report the next day, unless it's an enormous house. And, if I'm doing a house that's 8,000 square feet, it's going to take a little longer to generate that report because it took that much longer to do the actual inspection. But I think the biggest thing is to get it done as soon as possible during the transaction. That way you have time to go over the information in the report, because you're getting bombarded with a ton of information. Some stuff is going to be important to you and some stuff is not.
Well, I'm always worried about safety issues and things like that. You were talking about code, and I know Joe's over here percolating with the question, but you talked a minute ago, it was a great segue, code changes. Are you see anything new in the codes that we're going to need to be aware of right now?
Not right now.
Okay.
Not right now. I haven't seen any major things coming up, but they change quite frequently. It's they brought in 2000, I believe it was 2002, they started bringing in arc fault protectors. In 2008, they changed the code again that you have to have any area of your house that's in a habitable space where you live. If it's not GFC ground
fault circuit interrupters, yes. Easy for you to say.
Right. Well, if it's not a wet location, it needs to have an arc fault.
Now let me ask you a question, because a lot of these codes
He
are
violated
for
the rules, Rob.
I'm
yes,
sorry.
exactly.
I can't control
Well,
it.
no, it was going off with the same question that we had. Was a lot of times these codes that are going in though are for new homes that are being built. How do you address it with homes that are already built or have 10 or 15 years, and yet you've got these new codes in place?
Well, safety's safety. Bottom line, if it's a safety or a hazard, it's going to change anyway, and we still write it up. There's it's not such thing as really like grandfathered in. If it's a safety issue, it's a safety issue.
Yeah, and I think a lot of
That's a
people
good
don't
point.
understand that is that we actually have a kind of a disclosure piece. It's like you're going to see things there that they were code at the time, but it's not code now. And the GFCI is probably the number one thing I think of, is because houses built in the 80s, they didn't have GFCIs on
Right.
them. And so I always talk with my clients and say, look, they're going to write this up, and I already know what's going to be on some of the safety issues on that because the code changed. I said, it doesn't mean the house is bad. It just means the code changed, and you need to be aware of that.
Right, and I try to tell people that before I do the inspection too. There's going to be things that I write up in there that really may not. It was fine when the house was built, and it's still working just fine, but I have to note that in my report so that the consumer knows.
And out of respect the narrative.
Now to Joe A.
Joe Orsak, you remember what
The
your question was?
The question I had is this: that we are in the industry, and we always think of the process of buying and selling. But we have a huge listening audience that is neither buying nor selling, and they're just in their home. So this may be a very self-serving question for you, but I have a genuine interest in knowing it. Is there an advantage or a need or a benefit for our listeners who have been in their home for 5-10 years, and just to get a home inspection, not because they're buying or selling, but just to have some expert eyes checking the place out?
The thing is, it doesn't have to be a full-blown inspection. They can just have someone come out and do a maintenance inspection on their house to see what needs to be done.
Inspection.
I mean, because most people, they don't go up into their attic and look around. They don't check the roof. They don't check
it's
their
just this
TP
right.
and all.
It is the name of the show. What you don't know can hurt you, right? One of my pet peeves in my industry is when our government requires me to tell our clients that it's something they can do themselves. Well, yeah, absolutely. And all the knowledge out there to work on improving your credit, it's out there. But if you don't know what to look for, you have no idea what you're missing. I can look at a credit report and say, well, it looks accurate to me. I don't know what's missing, right? Same thing with home inspection. I don't know what to look for. I can walk around the house and go, I'm going to look at the roof. Okay, bunch of shingles.
Actually,
it looks great.
Roof is one of the most commonly overlooked things because a lot of people don't get up on the roof. And I know if it's a real steep pitch, you use binoculars, but nails pop up.
I can see obvious stuff.
Lifting.
I mean, if there's a hole in the doggone shingles, I'm going to go, well, that probably isn't good. But
Well, it's like when
I
you're
don't know
looking
what to look for.
when you go up on the roof. There's things that you really can't see unless you're up a little bit closer. If you see a lot of the shingles are kind of tilted or they're not lined up perfectly anymore, that could be signs of previous wind damage. So there's a lot of things on a roof that you're looking for, different types of flashing, your underlayment. People, I see issues with roofs all the time. Pretty much everyone I go on, I see something.
Yeah, you see a lot of curling. There's about a 30-year roof in Houston probably going to last 15 years because we have a pretty harsh environment. But you start seeing it loses the granularity. It starts curling at the ends.
Well, I'd imagine too that this is but Tony probably won't like me saying this one, but because it may limit his business. But moisture being one of those things that the termites are looking for and all that sort of thing. I would imagine that a roof that's not properly maintained or has those opportunities for moisture to get in is one of the central sources for moisture and creating.
Of course, that could happen anyway with drywood termites, isn't that right? So, I mean, they don't always have to have moisture. There's a
lot of opportunity for moisture in Houston.
There's other opportunities out there. So,
well, you start getting hail damage, wind damage. Once your roof is gone, you're allowing all the elements to get into your house, and it'll ruin your house.
Well, we're down to under a minute here already. Again, it's just crazy how time flies. So you do maintenance?
Yes, sir.
Maintenance inspections. Well, there you go. There's something I highly would recommend. At least for people like me, I don't know what I'm looking for. So
Kim, get him to do that inspection, and
so
of course we're going to pay Ashley.
And
we can tell Ashley make sure that tell her that you need to sell this house and buy her a new house.
It reminds me of the old adage. Remember that email that went around for a long time that said what the buyer perceives their home as, what their seller perceives their home as, the appraiser.
Yes.
That's one of the most classic pictures everywhere right there. So,
Ashley, how do folks get a hold of you for a maintenance inspection or anything else for that?
Well, they can call me. My number is 832-306-3723. And here in the near future, I should have a website up. That way people can contact me on.
He's been too busy to set up a
That
website.
internet thing's just a fad. I wouldn't worry about it.
AB Bowls with AB Home Inspectors. We're coming up against a break right now. Stay tuned. We'll be back for our last segment in a few moments.
Into the sky. Oh, they're smiling.
Welcome back to the Real Estate Rat Pack Radio Show with Chris, Joe, and Rob. The crew is taking your calls, so dial in at 1-800-808-5548.
And welcome back to the Real Estate Rat Pack Show. Time flies when you're having fun like we do here. And more importantly, it flies really fast whenever you have a great guest on. And so when we get into this open segment that we're doing the last segment right here, one of the things I didn't talk about that I wanted to sort of bring up, and I know in speaking between the break, we were speaking about this, is mobile apps. And specifically, a couple of mobile apps that HAR has, namely HAR, and then there is another one you're going to be speaking about right now. But let me tell you, if you don't know about these apps that we're going to talk about, it can hurt you. Because let me tell you, they really and truly can make a difference when you're out there working with your agent. It can be something you can work in conjunction with your realtor to find you the best
said
agent.
That so well.
I have been trained by the best.
That's right. Well, shall we talk a little bit, because they are both, we're talking about the HR app and the City of Houston app. Talk about the HR app and a little bit on what people can benefit by having that app on their phone.
Well, I think using the HAR app, you can certainly find listings as they come. It can be at your phone, at your iPad, wherever you need the information, and it can be pulled up immediately. So it's a great way for you to research. You can save listings on there and follow them as well. And there's a lot of good information on the HAR app. HAR, late last year, actually introduced the Houston Living app, which incorporates the HAR app into the Houston Living app as well. And you can pull up information based on where your location is, or based on where your home address is, or any specific address that you want to pull up. But you can find things like school, lifestyle, elected officials, what's happening in the area. You can buy tickets. You have Groupon deals that are available. It's a wonderful app, really. You should go to the App Store and download the Houston Living app.
Houston Living. I like that, by the way. Because it's taken what is an incredible property app, for lack of a better word, and integrated in the social side of things. Because so often people want to know what school district I am, or what's around me to eat, or what good coupons can I get within the area. And it's taken all those things and putting them into one app to say, now you can get all this.
Yeah, Mayor Parker's very excited about this app, and they promote it in the city, because that's really who we did it for, was the City of Houston.
Yeah, we did partner with the City of Houston, and you can actually follow Mayor Parker on the front page of the Houston Living app. She posts her tweets there, and so you can follow her tweets as well.
So it's another game changer that HAR did.
Well, I'll tell you, HAR is absolutely phenomenal, and for those, like I said, we always talk about this, but it's a great partner, for not only the agents in the community, but also for anyone who is coming into town and buying or selling real estate. It is a great partner, not only app, but an organization that you can work with.
Yeah, it's an absolute resource, and people treat it like a utility because it really is like. I was married to the editorial board of the Houston Chronicle when I was chair, and we wanted to talk about an issue we were having with minimum service, and we had armed with all this information, and all they wanted to talk about was HR.com, and they use and there's people that go on that just to play.
Yes,
they're on it every night. It's almost like crack.
I wouldn't know about that, but
from what I've heard.
Good thing you prefaced it with that.
Yes, I didn't actually. Prefixed it with that. But you found that to be true, I'm sure, with the people that you've come in contact with, and that they say, "Oh, I love HR.com."
An interesting thing about what you don't know can hurt you is agents, I don't think, use it as much as our consumers do. So I think it's a good point to make sure that you have it downloaded if you're a real estate agent and know what the consumer can find on there as well.
It's pretty embarrassing when they start asking you about a subdivision and you can't answer it, but they start giving you the information. It's like, oh, well, when I looked it up, it was this and this and this. And so,
well, the consumer side of the app, most of the thing, this is where, we talk about this all the time. This is where consumers are becoming extremely well educated, and HAR, this app, does a very good job. As a consumer, you can actually go out there and create your own CMA on that app. And so most people don't realize that is if you're an agent and you are working, your clients have the ability to go out there and pull some information. So you have to be aware of what's going on out there. And I think what you don't know can hurt you. You have to know what your client can also see.
Well, let me add right there, what you know can hurt you, is because if you think the value that you're coming up with is the value,
it's not.
It's not. You need to contact. It's like going to Zillow and Trulia. They can give you. It's an algorithm that works on it and gives you a kind of a range. But absolutely, consumers can get the information. They don't have the experience. What do I do with that information? And then how do I apply it? And that's where we come in.
Well, and I think that's one point I always make with people, consumers and agents, is that the consumer is more informed in today's world. There is a lot of information out there, but they're not more educated.
Right.
And so the education comes from the history and the knowledge and the experience of working with a realtor and finding the right realtor to work with on a daily basis.
I tell you what, I have absolutely a geeky side of me that I love.
I never noticed, Joe.
I love information and data and studying it. And part of my job in my company, I'm the marketing director for my company, so I'm constantly looking at data and traffic flow on our website and all this stuff. But I absolutely have had the experience, and maybe it's just as I get older, I have less patience for data. It's just too much. There's information overload, and I can find an opinion on any side of the argument I want. So I definitely I get more to the point. And on this show, we constantly talk about working with experts. It's great to have all the information out there, and you can read till you're blue in the face. But I'd much rather, my time is just more valuable to me. I'd much rather get a cursory knowledge of what I'm looking at, and then ask an expert and talk to an expert. Here's what I found. What are your thoughts? That type of thing. It makes making decisions and moving forward with stuff so much easier.
And Joe, to sort of pigtail on the back of that right there is the one thing, if you look at my little soapbox that I get on a lot of times every year, it's that technology is so advanced, and what our consumers can get access to is a lot of misinformation sometimes. Nothing will ever take out of our business, the real estate community business and all of our services, the quality face-to-face time and the handshake and the knowing. It's still a personalized transaction. Do not let technology take away that personalization.
Technology is a tool.
Yeah.
Chaille, you agree with this? It's a tool that we can utilize, but it really is the experience.
I agree, and I think also as an agent or a consumer, don't just rely on the tools to work through the transaction. You have to pick up the phone and have the conversation with people as well.
I thoroughly agree. I think that's one of the things, I tell everybody is sometimes you go to Starbucks and you see two people, they're texting back and forth across the table from each other. That's a little bit about the new generation that are doing it, and I would encourage a lot of people, especially the new generation, pick up the phone and call. Know that communication, it's a lot easier to pick up the phone and call somebody. And I tell my children about this all the time. When she wants to text me, I'm like, call me. My daughter, for example, call me. It's absolutely fine to pick up the phone. It's absolutely fine to meet somebody. The face-to-face, the hand-to-hand, the handshake. I am still a big believer. As much as I use technology, I am a big believer that something will never be better than me meeting somebody face-to-face.
Yep.
And a real estate transaction will never be easier unless it's done face-to-face. I thoroughly believe that.
And everybody communicates differently. And typically nowadays, an agent's probably going to ask, "How do you want to be communicated with?"
Right.
But me, I like face to face on the phone. You can hear intonations and things like that. And that's where a lot of deals have broken down, is that they'll send an email, and there's no inflection in there, and it's misread. And so that's why you pick up the phone.
And that's why I think agents need to pick up the phone and talk to other agents too, not just their consumers and their clients.
I would agree right there. And I had a question for Tony, actually. Tony, one of the things that I hear a lot out there is individuals who don't actually maintain a good pest control routine. They might do it once a year. They might see somebody a couple years go by, and all of a sudden, they find out they have termites. So what is the recommended maintenance program to ensure that your home is best protected, not only on a month-to-month basis, but on a year-to-year basis?
Well, as far as termites are concerned, you really should check the house at least once a year. And there's a lot of pest control companies, including us, that will do a free cursory inspection for termites. Naturally, everybody's hoping they'll find termites, and your homeowner's hoping we don't find them. But if it's as important, once you do a treatment, to check it every year, it's more important to check that house at least once a year if it's not been treated. Because there are things, as an example, you can treat the house today. Let's take January 1st as an example. And you get up January the 2nd, and the wife says, "Gee, honey, let's go out and redo the flower beds." Now, you had the house treated the day before. Well, you redo that flower bed, you just null and voided your treatment in that area the next day.
Wow.
Yeah, the new construction where they go out and pre-treat the land,
right?
That's kind of worthless, because once you go through and disturb that soil, it's over.
It's over.
And that's very interesting right there, because one of the things people don't realize is that insects in general can be disturbed or can be moved so easily. So you have to always make sure that you maintain somebody like Tony on speed dial,
yeah. Well,
or on a maintenance contract to get out there and to do this.
We run out of time a lot of times, and so I want to do that lightning round, as it were, and start with Ashley, since you're right next to him.
Yes.
What do you want people to take away from?
The one thing for 2014 you want them to take away for so far?
Really, I'd like to see people do more maintenance on their house. That's bottom line. Check what's going on with your house. Be knowledgeable. Understand how it works.
And it doesn't cure itself. It's not going to get better by ignoring it.
This is probably a room for shameless. How much do you do for the maintenance inspection?
It would depend on the house and the square footage of the home.
Okay, gotcha.
Tony?
Yep.
Well, I agree with Ashley. Maintenance is real important. The biggest thing is checking the house, and especially if you're talking about termites. That's probably where the most damage is concerned with the house, because you take, for an example, eastern subterranean termites. They can eat a tube before 1 foot long in 119 days. Well, everybody's heard about Formosan termites, which started in Galveston and has graduated all the way to Kingwood. They will eat the same two before in 18 days.
Good
oh my.
night.
So
That's
they have
very
a voracious appetite.
Wow.
Yes.
Do you have to do anything different to treat for
Got a
Formosans?
sander going on.
You
in there.
basically do the same thing, but if they're trapped in a house such as Joe's house, if they're trapped on the second floor and you can't get rid of them, you do a tent fumigation just like you would for drywood termites to get rid of them.
Sally,
Wow.
what would you like people to take away?
What I'd really like people to do this year is to focus on the relationship with everybody in the process and make sure that they're aware of what's happening in the relationship and try to build that relationship and take it to the next level. My message from HAR this year is to make it happen now, and I think there's no better time than to focus on the relationship.
And you're off to Inman next week, which is the chairmanship is a great trip, a great journey. And so Sally will get to go to New York and come back with all the new technology she can talk about when we have her back on. Joe, anything you want them to take away?
Not in that sort of time. Call a credit expert about how to pay down those credit cards that you just ran up over the holidays, because there's definitely different strategies depending on your goal.
There
You know, and Rob, you have anything to add?
I have an ad that we have about 10 seconds, so why don't you sign us out?
You know, as usual, right there, tell everybody, get an expert, listen to the radio show. We will talk to you next week.
And you've been listening to the Real Estate Rat Pack. The question is, who's Frank, who's Sammy, who's Dean, and who's the other guy?
Chris is
Yes, I'm
Chris
Frank.
is Frank.
I'm
He's
Dean.
Dean, and I'm Sammy.
Yes, that right. Yeah.
So tune in to the really big show every Saturday at 9 a.m. right here on 100.7 The Word, KKHT.